Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Well, I took you through Theresa Tam's official charts. And by the way, you can find that chart. It's YouTube and Google boost it on the search results. They really want you to check it out. Just type in Canada COVID stats. And I really think it's the first link you'll get. And then just go in and poke around in the different provinces. I selected deaths in the last 2 weeks, count, that means the actual numbers, and by province. And if you scroll your mouse over it, you will see that every single province and territory in Canada, except for New Brunswick, which has such a small population and they had 3 deaths, so it's sort of, the numbers are so small. The death rate, the death count rather, from COVID is down 80, 90, 95% from flu season. It's almost completely gone away, and you can see that the death counts predate any vaccine dosage. Like, it was just flu season. And so I ask, why is the enforcement becoming more brutal when the threat from the virus itself is now negligible? I'm not saying it's zero, but if you're under 70 and healthy, it's pretty close to zero. So why are they going after churches so viciously? Why are they requesting drone reconnaissance? Why are they, I don't know, I think it's because they have to keep appearances up. They have to make you scared since the facts themselves don't. Well, I want to tell you that while we do our journalism, in the background, our lawyers are doing their lawyering. And we now have about 1,200 cases. In fact, we've made about 150 videos. So we haven't even we barely told you 1 out of 10 stories. But we have so many lawyers fighting against these lockdowns that we just sometimes don't even hear for a while about victories along the way. But I was chatting with our chief reporter, Sheila Gunn Reid, this morning. We were just talking about something else. And she told me that she was talking to one of our lawyers in Calgary named Sarah Miller, who's been our point person on the Arthur Pavlovsky case. And just by the way, Sarah mentioned, oh, we won that one. Oh, we won that one. Really? I said, Sheila, you got to come on the show. I didn't even know that. We're winning incredibly important cases, but we're so busy we didn't even stop and notice. So joining me now from her studio in Northern Alberta is our chief reporter, Sheila Gunn Reid. Sheila, great to see you again.
Hey, Ezra, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, it's very good news that I got from Sarah Miller this morning. And, she's just been working so hard for the churches, for everybody. But in particular, she's winning a lot of these cases for churches and pastors.
Yeah, and you know what? I talk to Sarah from time to time, but she's so busy, I generally don't like to interrupt her. Like, she's going full tilt. In fact, I talked to their firm. They think they need to hire more lawyers. There's so many civil liberties fights. I've been paying, look, I can't pay attention to 1,200 cases. No human person can do that. I follow some of the crazy ones, like Arthur Pavlovsky. But you went to a northern Saskatchewan church that for a long time there had the unhappy record of having the largest COVID lockdown fine in Canada, a $14,000 fine for this very poor church that focuses on helping Aboriginal folks. They were hit by an abusive police department, $14,000 fine. We lawyered up for them, and you just told me this morning that we won that case. Tell me what you heard from Sarah.
We sure did. Yeah, I was talking to Sarah and she said, we've got really great news. She was able to get that $14,000 ticket kicked out of court. Now, the church in question here, the Full Gospel Outreach Center in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan is, if you want to say that a church is doing the Lord's work, it is Pastor Vernon Temple and the Full Gospel Outreach Center. They feed, they clothe, they minister to the homeless in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And by and large, mostly Indigenous people. They also do outreach to some of the Indian reserves around the area. And so he's really helping the people who are sort of forgotten by society. And he received a $14,000 lockdown ticket at the time, like you say, the highest fine in the country at the time. Now we've seen, fines in the neighborhood of $100,000 to some churches. But this was money that would be taken out of Pastor Vern's outreach to people who truly need it. This is not a rich church. I went there. I visited. I've been to northern Iraq. I've seen bombed out churches. The scale of the poverty of the people that Pastor Vern works with, it's comparable. The church had recently experienced a flood. They were trying to round up donations to deal with that. And along comes a very vindictive mayor in Prince Albert who seems to have a bit of a grudge against Pastor Vern because he ministers to homeless and drug addicted people. The mayor in Prince Albert saw his church as like a black hole, like a place where criminality happens, as opposed to it happens to be in a place where people need the church. And so it felt pretty vindictive. I went there, I visited, I saw how heartfelt Pastor Vern was and how he's really compelled to help the people in his community. So we lawyered him up. We got Sarah involved. She's worked very, very hard for, 6, 7, 8 months now already. And she was able to have that $14,000 ticket kicked out for Vern Temple and the Full Gospel Outreach Center. And, I couldn't be happier. She worked so hard. And she really is helping people who are helping the least of our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Now, I know that you just had a fairly brief phone call with Sarah and you didn't get very technical, but just to confirm, it wasn't a trial, so that we didn't have a full hearing about it. Our lawyer, Sarah, managed to get the Crown prosecutor to drop the case. Is that what happened?
That's exactly it. So it never went to trial. She was able to present evidence to the Crown, where they both agreed that this case should not go forward. So I guess that's Sarah saving money for us by working hard to deal with these things before they get to an expensive trial.
Right. Well, and that's one way to look at it, saving money. Obviously, we're doing this for the moral purpose. I take your point that I'm glad.
But to help more people.
Yeah, no, I know your point. I take your point. You're exactly right. But it also shows something very interesting. I know a little bit about Crown prosecutors. Those are basically lawyers, usually working for the Justice Department, although sometimes a private lawyer can be hired on a special basis. They have the duty to prosecute, but only if it's in the public interest and only if there's a reasonable chance of a conviction. So they have a duty to be fair-minded and careful. They can't be vindictive. They can't be extremist. They can't say, well, we got a 1 in a million shot. Let's put the church through it. So the fact that the Crown prosecutor, and again, I'm just going on what you have reported that Sarah told you, the fact that the police and the health authority and the mayor have a raging vendetta against this church and are issuing tickets like confetti, well, that's their opinion. But when a Crown prosecutor who has a duty as a professional, duty to the court, duty to the public, says, you know what? I don't think this is in the public interest. I don't think I've got a reasonable chance of conviction. I just don't think this is the right thing for the province to do. I will not take this junk case to trial. Now, that's my own language, but it's actually very, very powerful. And it's a rebuke of the police and the health authorities. And I said this to you this morning, in some ways, had the Crown proceeded, you'd say, okay, well, maybe they actually really have a case and maybe the church was wrong in some way. But for the Crown to say, I'm not taking this mess to court. I'm not using taxpayers' money for this vendetta. I'm not going to a judge and, I have a reputation as a lawyer. I'm not going to say, Judge, I think you should convict this pastor. Like, it's a hell of a rebuke of the police. And the reason I'm emphasizing this, Sheila, is I want to say to anyone watching this program, just because you get a ticket from some angry cop, some cop who doesn't know the rules, some cop who has a vendetta, some cop who has a quota, doesn't mean you did something wrong. It's just an accusation. If you go to fightthefines.com and we'll lawyer up and let a second pair of eyes see that ticket. And I have to say that we have won, I think, more than a dozen cases now without even setting foot in court. Because so many of these cases are such junk. The prosecutors say, I'm not touching that. I don't know what was in the cop's mind when he did that, but I'm not touching that. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.